Hey everyone, welcome to Locked On Lakers for Monday. Brian Kamenetsky and Andy Kamenetsky. Andy, we've talked about the need for Anthony Davis to play better. What about LeBron James, particularly if the Lakers are going to play small ball more often? We'll get into that. Plus, did Frank Vogel get it exactly right with the whole Dwight Howard instead of DeAndre Jordan thing? We'll discuss, and maybe a little trade talk as well coming up on Locked On Lakers.
You are Locked On Lakers, your daily Los Angeles Lakers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Want to thank everybody for making Locked On Lakers your first listen of every day, Monday through Friday. Get it up bright and early, so no matter where you are, it's waiting for you every single Monday through Friday. I want to let you know as well that today's episode of Locked On Lakers is brought to you by Prize Picks. Check out prizepicks.com and use the promo code NBA, or go to your app store and download the app today. Prize Picks is daily fantasy made easy. So we're going to try to get into some potential trade talk. We've reached that point in the season where people are looking ahead to figure out how teams around the league should improve themselves.
We're about 10 days away from when most of the league becomes eligible to be traded.
Yep. That's the December 15th deadline, yes. Which is a huge one around the NBA. Like you say, Andy, Frank Vogel made the big change with the rotation, inserting Dwight Howard instead of DeAndre Jordan. He had him starting, and I think he might have gotten it half right. And so we'll talk about that. But let's start with LeBron James. We've asked the question, does Anthony Davis need to play better? And I think you articulated the position very clearly and very correctly that the answer is yes. This applies to LeBron as well. And it came up big after the Clipper game on Friday when he was asked about the centerless lineup, which is basically him at center, and how he needs to play, particularly, the benefits both offensively and defensively, and how he needs to play defensively, and didn't perform, by his own admission, at the level that he needed to. If they're going to play those lineups, Andy, he's got to be kind of monstrous on the defensive side of the ball if it's going to work.
Yeah, he, like you said, to LeBron's credit, he actually acknowledged that he was, in his own words, bleepy, I believe is what he said. People can
we can't go blue.
Yeah, can't go blue. Got the note, but I think people can understand what we mean. Mm-hmm. And, it was interesting. Like, one play stuck out to me specifically where the Clippers, in this 119-115 win over the Lakers, they were running a high pick and roll, and LeBron gambled pretty blatantly and pretty badly for the steal at the basically at the top of the arc where the play was taking place. Didn't get it, and it left no back line whatsoever for what ended up, I believe, an Isaiah Hartenstein dunk. And LeBron versus Hartenstein, by the way.
There's a tremendous amount of LeBron James versus Isaiah Hartenstein.
Yeah, that I know I certainly wasn't expecting heading into this game. And it was interesting just in and of itself because it was LeBron playing against a true center in that matchup, which we haven't seen quite as much as when we've seen LeBron go at the 5. But it was just a reminder that LeBron, he obviously, there is a real advantage to him being able to call out these coverages because he is as good or better than anybody in the league at spotting whatever. And he communicates this stuff extremely well. But LeBron also has had this tendency over his career to, play like a rover back type position. Like Laker fans may remember, by the way, Kobe towards the end of his career pre-Achilles used to do that a lot.
This is not a thing that is uncommon among stars.
Right. And look, guys like Kobe and LeBron who are really good at anticipating and really understand sets other teams are running and often and their own schemes as well, they can be really good in that role. But it's one thing to be doing that at a wing position like where Kobe used to do it or LeBron typically did it. It's another thing to try to play rover back at center. You can't do that. When you are supposed to be the back line of a defense that truly has nobody else that even remotely qualifies as like a backline option or somebody that you can count on for weak side shot blocking, stuff like that, you have to be really disciplined. You have to stay in the exact
I
rotations.
was going to say, I mean, it's not even so much, it's like, I'll even take it a step further. Their defense can't afford gambling. Like, this is not a group of guys that can gamble. And if you're going to play that small lineup with the players that are theoretically going to be on the floor with you, where LeBron and, even if when Trevor Ariza comes back, because I think preferably for Frank Vogel be part of that, their switchability and his defensive smarts and all that kind of stuff. It's not like you look at Trevor Ariza as a rim protector. That's not, so you're going to have those guys. And then the deficiencies that we know about with Carmelo Anthony, with all the guards at the point of attack, with Russell Westbrook, with Malik Monk, with Wayne Ellington, whoever it might be. Nobody can gamble. Nobody. Because once you do that, now you're scrambling. The Lakers struggle on the defensive glass in their best moments. They're going to struggle even more in these smaller lineups. And if guys gamble, they're not where they're supposed to. Like, nobody can gamble. And I think LeBron, like most people,
That's a sad world you're describing to me, Brian. Nobody can gamble.
Nobody can gamble.
That's really
right,
depressing. That's one of the most depressing things I've ever heard.
Except when we get later in the show to our friends at betonline.ag. Everybody should then you can gamble.
Yes.
But not here.
That's where the Lakers, that's where all these guys should get their gambling fix in. They should go over to BetOnline.
But not on basketball, though. Don't do that.
No, absolutely not.
They're in a position where defensive integrity just needs to be solid at all times. And I do appreciate that LeBron pointed out, in this game, because it was not, I didn't know it, not to get too sidetracked. I didn't know what to think that much about Friday's game, because on the one hand, they didn't play necessarily a bad game.
No,
the Clippers aren't necessarily a bad team. But the Clippers are struggling, as we talked about with Sabrina Merchant, on Friday's show. Clippers are struggling too. They've got all kinds of problems. They've got injury issues. They've got continuity problems. They are a 500 team. And for the Lakers, coming off the 2-game winning streak, feeling a little positive in that sort of decent loss. Hey guys, that's a really uncomfortable place to be at this point of the season.
Well, also too, the Lakers were at more full strength than the Clippers. And,
yes.
And even though, they still had to deal with their own continuity issues of reintegrating LeBron and stuff like that, it's a game that it felt like was, if nothing else, theirs for the taking. They spent a lot of this game fighting from behind. And what I thought was interesting too, in terms of their defense, in the first half, I thought they actually did a good job with rotations, good job of being mindful of the spots they were supposed to be in, but they were fouling too often. They were just sending the Clippers to the line. I think the Clippers went to the line 20 times in the first half of that game. Second half, they did a better job of not sending the Clippers to the line, but their rotations were way worse.
Is DeAndre Jordan not fouling people like Dwight Howard because he's not near enough to them? We have that conversation about a lot of people, and I think in the second half, and this is part of with the LeBron problem when they went small, is their coverages really broke down.
Dude, in the fourth quarter, I was like, are you guys aware of what Luke Kennard does? Because he kept getting these wide open looks off defenders that were sagging way off him. I'm like, he is out there to do precisely one damn thing. Luke Kennard does nothing on either side of the ball but shoot threes.
And the idea, Andy, that Luke Kennard is going to penetrate and finish at the rim, you know what that is? It's a Kennard.
You know what? I would think that was funnier if I knew what the other one meant. I don't know what a Kennard is.
Laugh anyway. But let's get back to there's a real problem with this whole LeBron and defense and what he is being asked to do, and it gets to this question we asked at the top of the show. Does LeBron need to be better? Because the answer to that question is yes. And those two things, LeBron and defense, are at loggerheads, I think, in some way, in terms of getting LeBron to the level that the Lakers need him to be. We'll talk about it next.
Locked On Lakers brought to you by Prize Picks. Hey, NBA fanatics, have you heard about Prize Picks? It's daily fantasy made easy. Prize Picks has the best NBA DFS prop game on the market. More NBA props than any other DFS prop operator. They offer superstar players as well as bench players, only recording a handful of minutes each game. Everyone that deposits and uses the promo code NBA receives a 100% deposit match up to $100. You can pick 2 to 5 players and an over under their projections. You can win up to 10 times on any entry. It's just you versus the projected numbers. PrizePicks allows also mixed sport entries. You can take the over on LeBron, whatever, combined with the under on Lamar Jackson, whatever. Just keep it weird, keep it goofy, keep it fun. You can use the award-winning app on both the App Store and Google Play. PrizePicks is safe. They offer fast withdrawals. Don't hesitate. Check out prizepicks.com. Use the promo code NBA or go to the App Store today. PrizePicks is daily fantasy made easy.
Hey, Andy, does this sound familiar? Don't answer yet. You've got one device that lets you catch the game live. Another lets you stream your favorite shows. You're watching sports highlights on your phone. You've got your neighbor's best friend's login for all the good stuff. Now answer. Does that sound familiar?
Yes.
Okay, good. I want to tell you about something that's a simple way to get the entertainment you love without all the hassle, and it's a great way to get your TV together. It's called DirecTV Stream. It brings your live TV and on-demand favorites together like nothing you've ever seen before, so you can watch all your favorite sports, movies, and shows all in one place. And that means no more juggling remotes, no more need to buy another device ever again. And the best part, there's no annual contract. So get rid of the clutter, Andy. Get rid of the confusion. Get your TV together with DirecTV Stream. You can learn more about it at directtv.com. That's directtv.com. A compatible device is required, and content does vary by package. So we've had an interesting conversation, about LeBron, and like down the road, my position is the Lakers have the ability to build around, around like a declining LeBron James in ways that are coherent. Maybe are built around Anthony Davis, another star that comes in as they've got their contracts lined up. So like LeBron can still be a very good and useful player going forward. You've made the point, though, and you are exactly right, that there's a big difference between relative decline in LeBron playing like the 10th best player as opposed to the second this season. Like if it happens 3 years from now, that's not necessarily a big deal. That's actually pretty good. If it happens this year, the Lakers are in real trouble. And we've talked about how Anthony Davis needs to be better. And I don't even mean this in a who needs to be better debate. LeBron isn't playing at the level that he was playing at last year before the injuries and all that kind of stuff when he was being talked about in the MVP conversation. He is not anywhere close to that right now. And the Lakers are not going to win if he doesn't get back there. That might not have been the plan, but that's where they are. And LeBron James needs to be better on both sides of the ball. And the fact that he's going to be asked to do more defensively, to me, makes the whole equation much harder.
Well, I mean, here's the thing. It shouldn't, because that should have been the equation when LeBron and Anthony Davis pushed the front office to acquire Russell Westbrook. Because if you knew, and they had to be, everybody that they would be giving up in order to bring in Westbrook, then assuming you understand the game at all, and I know that LeBron and Anthony Davis do, you have to be factoring in the idea of, okay, we are going to have to make up for those defensive losses, and that got compounded by the decision not to retain Alex Caruso. We have to make up for that ourselves. And, that is the exchange for doing all these other things that were supposed to juice the offense. And so far, that's been a mixed bag at best. But this was the deal that we made. And maybe the deal in their heads sounded, either more theoretical or easier to do than they were imagining. Maybe they thought that at the end of the day, just, these parts would create a better sum than they seemed like on paper. But whatever the case may be, this is something that they should have anticipated.
Well, maybe or like you said, like I think they wondered that, like, will the fact that I don't have to do as much on offense, like, that my load offensively will be easier this year than last, make it so I can give more on the other side. Because, we were having an interesting debate, kind of just as we were talking about the Lakers and talking about the show, is LeBron as, engaged enough? I think both of us agree no. I just think what's an interesting question is, I think there are probably more, just my opinion, probably more similarities to what he was doing over the last couple of years, but it wasn't as noticeable because there was so much more infrastructure around it. I could be wrong.
I think you're definitely wrong.
That may be, but or to what degree that matters. Because I agree with you that he has not been engaged at the level that he needs to be engaged at. But what I think is nakedly obvious is that those places that allow defensive, allow stars to cheat, and this is something that happens on every single team in the league, that those places that allow the stars to cheat are gone. And it's a it's a really difficult spot because whether you think LeBron is on the verge of a steep decline or like a really shallow decline, at the very least, from a health standpoint and an energy output standpoint, you just can't expect. He's playing more minutes this year than he did last year. I mean,
He's
you
playing
can
more
hope
minutes per
for,
game than he ever has as a Laker.
right. You can't expect that to be okay. You can hope, you can want, but you can't expect that to be okay without there being some kind of trade-off. And this is a position where the Lakers have put themselves, where Rob Pelinka, LeBron, however you want to divide up the blame pie here, the Kamenetsky blame pie. I am very uncomfortable with the idea that they need LeBron to be better than he was, better than he is now, better even maybe than he was last year for this whole operation to work. That is not a comfortable place to be. Not so much that he can't do it in the playoffs, but to get to the playoffs, like that's a tremendous amount of energy he's got to expend on both sides of the floor.
Well, I mean, again, this is what you not only signed up for, it's what you manufactured in order to sign up for. Because if nothing else, you had to be expecting more responsibilities defensively.
Do you think I'm wrong, though? The Lakers, in theory, were supposed to be able to let LeBron build this year and get, have a lighter workload. It looks to me like they're in a place where not only they're going to need him to be as good as he was last year, potentially even better, for this team to thrive, to win a championship and all that kind of stuff. Because I just don't think the pieces are going to come together in a way that lighten the load that the Lakers want, even if the big three end up kind of coming together in a big way.
I mean, I think it depends in some ways how you're defining lighten the load. I mean, I anticipated LeBron's playmaking responsibilities would be lightened just because you bring in Russell Westbrook, and Russell Westbrook is in certain ways like a facsimile of LeBron. He's not as good as LeBron, but there's a lot of what you look for from LeBron that Russ does. So in that sense, specifically the playmaking and I guess some of the all-around game that both LeBron and Russ have, like in that sense, certain things will be lightened. But I kind of feel like at the end of the day, when you're talking about contending teams, superstars are supposed to be superstars. They're always supposed to play at an extremely high level. Otherwise, they're not superstars. They're just either
that's true.
Otherwise they're just either all-stars or they're all-star adjacent type players. If you are expecting LeBron to be LeBron, then he's at a superstar level. Otherwise, you're talking about a completely different player. I guess the other way to answer that question is how good is Anthony Davis? Like, if Anthony Davis cranks up his play to, what is truly an undisputed, he is in that MVP conversation. He is a monster on both sides of the ball. He is somebody that changes the complexion of games, game in, game out. Then yeah, I guess LeBron doesn't have to be quite as good as he would.
But I think they need both. Like, here's the thing.
Sure.
I think both of those guys need to be top 3, 4, 5 guys. And like all the time. I don't mean like just in the playoffs. I mean like on a game in and game out basis.
I guess the answer to the question is,
the
way I'd answer it is, did you expect LeBron to still be a superstar this year? If the answer is yes, then you expected him to play at such a high level that whatever difference there would be from either last, because then otherwise he's just a different player.
I just mean like, he can't even be a little bit lesser than he was last year. He's not what he was last year and needs to get there. And I am starting to wonder whether he needs to be better. And if he does, it is a difficult place for the Lakers to be, because right now the gap between them and the real true contending teams is massive.
Well, when you look at him off,
to close it is going to require yeoman's work from their big three.
Well, I mean, when you're looking right now at his numbers, just some of the counting stats, but they do tell some of the story. His field goal percentage, currently 47.5 overall. That's his lowest as a Laker by a huge margin. Last season he shot 51.3% from the field.
Right. In part because he's shooting more threes, but also because he's just not been as good.
Right. Well, he's not finishing at the rim. Right now he's shooting just below 70% from 0 to 3 feet. He is on his career 73.5, and he has never shot below 73% as a Laker. Like, that's a big deal, and that is really indicative in and of itself with what we're talking about. And
especially
as
considering he goes there less. I mean,
right,
it's just
and we also too, really quick, you talked about the amount of threes that he's taking. He's averaging about 8 a game, and he's shooting around 33%, which is below his career average. It's about as low as it's been as a Laker, and that is problematic when you take that many threes. So
Mhm.
there's a lot happening right now with
It
LeBron.
is a, AD for the, AD needs to elevate to a certain place, and it's a certain style, it's a certain aesthetic, it's a certain way of dominating. And at least, I thought it was encouraging. Davis was a much bigger part of the fourth quarter against the Clippers than he had been in other games. Um, but the other part of this, LeBron's got to be better. I mean, and so that is tough spot for the Lakers to be in. Let's look at the lineup choice that Frank Vogel made with Dwight Howard as a starter, and whether or not he got it right, and what it might mean for how the Lakers need to play going forward. We'll do that next.
Locked On Lakers brought to you by Built Bar. It's the holiday season, which means gifts, eating, and more eating. But you got to offset the decadence with some type of responsibility. You just don't want it to taste responsible. So it makes it a perfect time for Built Bars, the new holiday dessert. Feast on something that tastes awesome. You can actually feel good about it. It's low calorie, low carb, low fat, high protein, covered in 100% chocolate. It's a great option for when you're going ham during the holidays, but you don't want your taste buds to know the difference. You share some Built Bars at the holiday gatherings, the family's getting together. It makes things less awkward. Or just do what I do, avoid conversation altogether. Go to built.com, use the promo code LOCK15 to get 15% off your first order. Again, promo code LOCK15, 15% off at built.com.
Locked On Lakers also brought to you by BetOnline.ag. BetOnline has you covered all season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before. As football season marches to the playoffs, you got your basketball, you got your hockey. BetOnline remains your number one spot for all the sports action this season. So head on over to the new updated desktop or mobile website, sign up today, and receive your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. Just use the promo code Locked On to receive that bonus. So from basketball, football, NHL, boxing, UFC, right down to your favorite Vegas casino games, don't wait to take advantage of all the amazing offers for the 2021, almost 2022 season, Andy. BetOnline is the fastest and easiest way to bet on all your favorite sports. BetOnline, where the game starts. So aside from the Lakers needing to get better performances from two of their three superstars, Russell Westbrook, I'm totally cool with what you're doing these days. They also have seemed to have replaced their third quarter problem with a first quarter problem, which shines a light to me, Andy, on the necessity of figuring out really what is the lineup you can put out there that gives you the best chance to get off to a good start. The Lakers fell behind against the Clippers. Dwight Howard started over DeAndre Jordan. That in and of itself is good that he's playing over there, but I feel like Vogel got this half right. That Dwight should be playing over DJ, but they shouldn't be starting a center, a classic big, so to speak.
Well, I mean, first of all, to illustrate what you were talking about before, the last 10 games for the Lakers, according to NBA.com, they've had a minus 9.4 net rating in the first quarter. Over the last 5 games, it's dropped to minus 10.9. And during that period, the offensive rating has just fallen off a cliff.
You can't, if you're good, you can't fall behind. This team isn't good enough to fall behind against teams like and climb their way out. Nobody digs their way out of a hole. We all have to stop using that phrase, but they're just not good enough for that.
Yeah, I mean, and some of this obviously is the lack of continuity. LeBron in and out of the lineup, other guys in and out of the lineup, but some of this is just the combinations that have been chosen or should be chosen and haven't yet. That question with Dwight, I think, is really interesting because obviously Frank Vogel is inclined to try to start big, try to have as much size as possible. Like, this is just something that has been established over the course of his career. Or certainly his career with the Lakers. He's, shown some flexibility towards starting AD at the 5. Although some of the times I think it's felt more like because he's absolutely had to, as opposed to he's really wanted to. He's definitely moving more towards the idea of giving up size,
Yeah,
we've seen
Davis is
that.
playing more 5 this year than he has in any year
Right.
as a Laker, and the Lakers have played the LeBron lineup.
That's what I was
Right.
gonna say. That's what I was gonna say. I mean, he has shown more inclination than he ever has before earlier on in the season towards going smaller. But he is obviously looking for a place where a traditional big man fits on this team. And if you're going to play LeBron a lot of those, centerless minutes, as he referred to it, the only place that you may have for that traditional big, whether it be DeAndre or Dwight, is going to be in the starting lineup.
Right.
I think part of it, when you were saying get it half right, is obviously the question of whether Dwight should be there or not. But I also wonder if the other half right possibility might be who ends up playing at the 2, because I feel like if you're going to be starting Dwight, and that seems to be the direction that Frank Vogel's going in right now, I wonder if it becomes that much more critical or mandatory that rather than Taylor Horton-Tucker, you are starting either Wayne Ellington or Malik Monk
Yeah.
or somebody that just provides more shooting as opposed.
Real floor spacing.
Yes,
Real
exactly.
floor spacing.
Somebody that you will not leave alone, as opposed to Taylor Horton-Tucker, who, put aside some questions of redundancy and whether or not you're really getting the most out of him with that many of his minutes being played alongside LeBron, Russell Westbrook, and, to I think a tangible degree, Anthony Davis.
Mhm.
He's not a shooter. You are going to let him take threes.
Yeah. The flip side is if you're not going to start, if you're going to start, if you don't start Dwight, then THT makes a lot more sense. You
Yes.
can, you can, if you don't, if you're going to space the floor from the beginning, then THT makes more sense. If you want,
Yes.
it, it's a question of what the priorities are, and like this is, I defend Vogel if he's not going to play Avery Bradley. I think it's a little easier to defend some of these choices. Your point about like, well, when are you going to go small? Like a backup center, like a center is going to play at some point. So which are the lineups you want to prioritize? How much does it matter when you do it? And if the Lakers were better, I don't think they'd get off to some of these slow starts. If the offense were more functioning, if all these other things were, it's not, Dwight Howard was on the floor when they walloped the Kings in the third quarter. I mean, he was there for that. He was there for when they had a better end of the first quarter after DJ was replaced.
Of course, it was also the Kings.
This is true. Goes back to my point earlier. When are they going to beat some good teams?
Well, they're going to get more opportunity to. Their schedule's getting harder. I mean,
Yeah.
some of the reason they have not beaten a lot of good teams, they haven't played a lot of good teams.
They haven't, but the ones they have played.
Yeah. Oh, no. They performed poorly when
Right.
given the opportunity. I'm just saying, to be fair, they haven't played a lot of good teams to begin with. They've just crapped the bed when given the opportunity.
And so, I mean, going forward, I agree
Other
with you
than Milwaukee.
100%. If Dwight's going to start, it's got to be Ellington or Monk. And I think Monk is really working himself into a place where his value comes out when they go small, I wonder if like THT he might have more utility as an attacking player as opposed to a spot up shooter like Ellington, where all Ellington's really going to do is lurk around the 3-point line and slide in different places and draw attention that way. Um, I would love to see what happens if he just brings Dwight in for those like 12 to 15 minutes or whatever in those spots where AD is sitting and they're not playing the LeBron 5 lineup. But you're right. It's hard to figure out how you're going to get all these things in.
This is though where, I mean, really, I think the lack of wings, like true wings on this team, starts becoming problematic because it kind of forces you to go in either one direction or the other, and there are downsides to either one. But it doesn't give you a lot of flexibility. It doesn't give you the opportunity to really kind of meet a bunch of different areas halfway. So I if you're going to end, I think it really does start coming down to just how much does that size matter to Vogel, because he's obviously looking to leverage it as much as possible and make it a thing as much as possible, because otherwise the solution's easy. Just start Anthony Davis at the 5, go with LeBron as essentially the backup center, and play as many of your guards and sort of wings as possible. I mean, like it's really just a matter of him wanting that size out there.
Right,
I mean,
you have
that
sort of LeBron and AD on the floor at all times, and some of them's playing
yeah.
center, some, you know, and
I mean, that's really
yeah.
what complicates this is just the desire to play, I was going to say Dwight or DJ, but in this particular case, it's Dwight. It's the desire to play him essentially at all that really
But
creates this, like without it
it's
being
not just
matchup
that.
dependent.
It's the other point that you made too about having no middle ground. That
Yes.
there's nothing in between. And also too, are you gonna get Sacramento Dwight, or are you gonna get Dwight who hasn't been as good as he's been against Sacramento for most of the season, Dwight? And that makes a
Well,
difference
but
too.
here's part of the problem, though.
And oh, go ahead. And then
I was going to
I'll
say
wrap it up.
part of why I would favor the LeBron at center lineups, even acknowledging there are issues with them, including as we talked about earlier, LeBron having to hold up his end of the bargain. I think it just I think it just creates more of a continuous identity for this team because if nothing else, the lineups that they were using with Dwight as the backup center, I don't really think made them that much better defensively anyway. And Dwight was not really a great fit with a lot of the guys that he was playing with anyway.
Mhm.
And we've talked
No,
about Dwight.
he was playing backup in mostly because defensively they would be a tire fire if you tried to put DeAndre Jordan with that group.
Sure. And they were maybe not a tire fire with Dwight there, but they were certainly a stack of tires. And, there was gasoline on
And
them
there
and
was
you were
smoke.
very
There was
right. Well, you
yeah,
were
it
worried
was
about
there was unsafe working conditions.
yes, and you were very concerned that an arsonist might be nearby, even if it wasn't completely on fire at that point. Like, I think part of what has led Vogel to this is the recognition that Dwight wasn't fitting well with those lineups anyway. And he wasn't really creating, again, like something that just made sense. LeBron at the five with those groups actually makes sense with the overall roster composition of the
Yeah.
Lakers, even acknowledging the issues that come with it.
And you can plan for it. I think you're right. I love how your hands look. If you get them really close to the camera, it's like whoa. You can plan for it. You can create an identity, and you can work around the shortcomings of it. They do need to lean into something. The other real critical piece of this, and we got to it last week, but there's some new wrinkles I think to talk about. It is THT. We don't have time today to dive into some of the trade possibilities and the roster configuration, all that ultimately in a lot of ways come down to THT, what the Lakers are going to do going forward. But that'll be a big topic of conversation this week. On Tuesday, we're going to do a crossover
Yes.
episode with John Corrales of Locked On Celtics. Don't know exactly what a true crossover episode looks like. We haven't done it. We've had guests, but at least it's like a real crossover episode. Very exciting, but we get everybody ready for the big game against the Celtics. And so that'll be exciting, and lots of good stuff coming up this week, and we will see everybody on Tuesday. Thanks.